Great. Thanks, Grace. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining Let's Grow Kids for our third Lunch and Learn. It's our final one. We're going to go on for about an hour on how to organize and how to get organized. So we're going to condense multiple decades of knowledge into an hour. So as you can imagine, it's going to be fairly high level. Between Shayla and I think we have 35 years of organizing experience. And so we're happy to workshop ideas with you offline if you want to reach out to us. But at this point, we have a pretty quick flow and we'll get into it. In a number of cases, we have some really great resources that we're also happy to share. And there will be some follow-up to this, including the recording and some of those resources. In just a minute, we're going to go over the goals, agenda, and what we hope to accomplish today. But first, asking that everyone drop your name, location, pronouns, and what brings you to today's session into the chat. So my name is Jamie Comtois. I'm the Regional Field Manager for Lamoille and Washington and Orange counties. And I have a couple other colleagues here on the call with us today. So Shayla.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shayla Zamuto. I'm the Senior Field Manager here at Let's Grow Kids. I've been here a very long time, and I cover Chittenden, Addison, and Franklin Grand Isle counties, along with Grace, who I will introduce next.
Grace will introduce next. Sherwood. I work with Shayla to cover Franklin Grand Isle and Chittenden counties for Let's Grow Kids, organizing them. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat today. So as we go through, if you have any questions about slides or what people are saying, feel free to drop them in the chat. And if we have time at the end, we will try to answer some of those. But if not, like Jamie said, we're going to do some follow-up after this. So I will note your questions and we'll get back to you about them through there. Okay. And next, we have Dara too, who helped with this presentation.
Hi, I have been with, my name is Dara Slett, and I've been with LGK for about a year, supporting the field team with trainings and working with the fellows last year. And I will also be able to support in the chat with answering questions.
And just wanting to acknowledge, I see Angela Hillsman and Rex with us, and Suzanne Graham from our team as well. So if I missed anybody, my apologies. And lots of friendly faces out there. It's nice to have you all. So thanks for making time at lunch. Okay, go ahead, Shayla.
All right. Today's goal is for you all to walk away from the session with an understanding of how to organize and get organized. We will be spending time making sure you come away understanding the power that each of us has as advocates and organizers. And we're going to outline the difference between goals, strategies, and tactics in organizing before ending with some key tactics that will work for recruitment going forward. While we are just looking at this goals and agenda sheet, what I would like you to do, not that we're going to talk about it as a group, but for your own learning and training purposes, I want each of you to think of an issue that you would like to organize for. It doesn't have to be a real life issue. It can be something just for the sake of practicing what goals, strategies, and tactics are. As an example, mine might be something like, I want to organize my community because there's a road on the way to the elementary school where there's no sidewalk and kids ride their bikes to school and cars speed by and it's not safe. That is an organizable thing. I want you all to think about something that you can keep in the back of your head that you're passionate about, that you can envision organizing for in the future. So without further ado, again, I'm just going to say, while we're presenting, it can be hard for us to see hand raises or anything. So please put any questions that you want into the chat, and then we'll make sure someone can answer them. All right, Jane.
So power, anybody have any thoughts on power lately? Raise your hand if you've been noticing anything about power. Yeah, power is a really interesting thing, isn't it? So this slide is all about understanding your power in organizing. There's hard power, the ability to make decisions yourself, and soft power, the ability to influence decision makers. So I'm going to kind of go a little bit into hard power first. So examples are state, federal, local lawmakers have hard power. Judges have hard power, but also hard power is limited on if you're in the majority or not, if you have a veto-proof majority. If in the US Senate, for instance, you have 60 votes for bringing something, ending discussion and bringing something to the floor for a vote, there's ways that hard power also has varying levels of influence, amounts of influence. Soft power, this is how we've historically talked about it. You may notice a hesitation in my voice. In America, most hard power is limited. Because we live in a democracy, while lawmakers can make the decisions, there are mechanisms to hold them accountable to those decisions, ultimately elections. But even the calculations that politicians make in order to have a chance of getting reelected can be a limit on hard power. So when we think about soft power, we're thinking about it in a couple of different ways. One, we'll talk about financial resources, brand credibility, access to hard power, expertise, grassroots, grass tops, and the moral high ground. So when we think about soft power and the ways we can influence hard power, all candidates have to raise money to run for office. Many have to raise money while in office, but also there are many ways organizations spend money on tactics and campaigns that can help or hurt candidates while they're in office. Everything we do costs money, so the amount of financial resources is a huge resource or a source of soft power. But many of us have also witnessed that lots of small dollar donations have a huge impact. Brand credibility, lots of people have heard of the Sierra Club, Greenpeace. What about the Union of Concerned Scientists or Native Forest Council or Fauna and Flora International? So how much of what you know is based on brand recognition of an organization? So have you heard of them? Have you not heard of them? What do you know about them? So thinking about brand and credibility is really critical. Access. So this is your proximity to hard power. So can you schedule a meeting in person with a lawmaker? Do you know people that know the lawmaker? This is where power mapping comes in, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Do you have the ability to connect with them or other people they want to know? In Vermont, this is fairly easy because many of us can connect with our legislators at the local coffee shop or out on the farm or many other locations where we're in proximity to our representative senators and also other elected officials. We also can interact with folks on social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Front Porch Forum, and local papers. So it's not very difficult to create relationships with Vermont legislators, and it's wonderful to cultivate that trust and that relationship for the long term. Expertise is another way to influence soft power. How much special expertise or knowledge do you have in the field you're working in? Do you have lived experience? For instance, how has Act 76 implementation benefited you directly? Do you have a story? You are the expert in your own life. Your experience is valuable information to legislators, so share it. And then kind of grassroots and grass tops. So grassroots, meaning all of us who work together, who may or may not have, I think there are some folks in this call who are grass tops as well, but for many of us, we're grassroots. We're kind of the people in the communities. At the most basic level, we're residents, we're citizens. So how many people does your organization have? How many people can you activate, and in what ways can you activate them? So some tactics we'll talk about is how many folks can you get to make phone calls to legislators or emails? How many folks will post social media posts? How many folks will write letters to the editor? So kind of a movement from the bottom up is grassroots. Grass tops, this is also about people, but grass tops tend to be influencers, the heads of organizations, the heads of government, agencies, people who have access to data. So thinking a lot about the heads of businesses or kind of other folks who have organizational clout and their proximity to power. And so does your organization, or do you have relationships with folks like that? Facts and moral high ground. So this is the final one. So data is really critical. An example of how this has worked, and many of you know these stories because you were a part of this in creating the data sets, but Act 76 was grounded in understanding how investing in early childhood education has long-term positive impacts on children's long-term positive outcomes. And so really grounding whatever issue you're working on back onto information and data that's been vetted and vetted and vetted, because facts do matter. Because we live in such a partisan and politically divided time, sometimes sharing facts about a problem, personal stories or experiences can be more effective in communicating your message than making an argument that your policy recommendation is correct or right. So anyway, let's just pause for a second and see if folks need any clarification before we move on to organizing to win. Any questions popping up for folks in the chat?
I'm waiting for people to maybe type some stuff out, but so far, no.
Okay.
Great. I am going to talk about organizing to win. So now that we understand our role and we truly do have the power to make a difference, I would like to talk about the specifics of organizing and what it means to organize to win. I would like to first start with the actual definition of organizing, because if I had a nickel for every time I introduced myself as an organizer and someone said, "Oh, I would love help with my closets," I would be rich, right? Organizing is a field. So I've taken this definition right from Google's AI summary because it is spot on. Political organizing, also known as community organizing, involves mobilizing individuals and groups to advocate for specific political goals or policy changes. It's about building relationships, fostering leadership, and engaging in activities like lobbying, campaigning, and direct action to influence decision makers. Essentially, it's a process of empowering people to take action and collectively address issues they care about. So when we talk about organizing strategy and tactics and goals, why are we doing this? Because rushing into action when planning a campaign can lead to chaos and undermine your success. Organizing to win means outlining your goals, clarifying your strategies and tactics to achieve those goals before you begin the actual work. Taking the time to define the process and get clear on the roles in the beginning of the process changes the way you execute your strategy and what those results look like. It is literally being organized, getting all of your ducks in a row. Organizing to win matters for a number of reasons. Because when we're organizing, we're usually working towards something that we feel passionate about, and feelings and emotion come into play a lot of the time. So developing clear goals and strategies and consistent tactics allows the team to channel that emotion into action. Because well-coordinated activity has the biggest impact, because a well-defined campaign keeps the advocates on track, and because when advocates understand the campaign at an intimate level, they become more invested in it and the team strengthens. Everyone who is on this Zoom today is invested in the childcare campaign, and we have seen what happens when everyone is clear on the goal and comes together to work towards the same goal together. And lastly, because we have finite resources, right? We can't do everything. And if we try to do everything, we risk it being uncoordinated and not strategic. So it's important to remain thoughtful and strategic in our decision-making and work as a team. This is a good time to pause for clarity or questions. Again, if you have any, pop them in the chat and Grace will help coordinate, letting us know that there's a question in there. The next thing we're going to talk about are two tools in your organizer toolbox before we get to the strategy and tactics, because they are instrumental to the organizing process. Those two tools are relational organizing and community mapping.
Thanks, Shayla.
Yeah.
Any questions popping up, Grace?
Yeah, a few. One I think we can address pretty quickly. It's not so much about organizing, but just a question about kind of LGK specifics and supporting families. Oh, sorry, there's a lot of stuff going on in the chat. Okay,
maybe we'll keep going and then we'll circle back at the end. Okay.
So we're going to talk a little bit about relational organizing. I'm guessing many of you have lots of relational organizing experience in this space, seeing lots of folks who have done amazing things in this chat today. So this will be kind of reviewing stuff we already know inherently as we have relationships with people in our community and use them in different ways. So relational organizing is a tool within a broader organizing strategy to build power in which individuals, groups, or organizations harness their personal networks and relationships to affect change. Relational organizing is the act of mobilizing personal contacts within a volunteer's network. It can be as simple as a call, a text, or a friendly chat at work or a community event. With a single conversation, volunteers can jumpstart action within their communities. To put it simply, relational organizing is talking to people you know about an issue you're passionate about and asking them to take action with you. Anybody, you can either raise it electronically if you're off camera, or you can raise your hand physically. Anybody have experience doing any of that in their own lives? Yeah. Awesome. So another way I like to think about relational organizing, because I've been around for a while, so I've seen an extractive model of organizing where I come in and I get your name and a number and I ask you to take an action that may or may not impact you directly, and I will then be gone. And so one of the things I've noticed over time is that there's organizations like Let's Grow Kids that have long-term community investment in organizing and do this work with, where we build connections with each other, relationships. Many of you I've sat with and had tea or been out in freezing cold weather, freezing our hands off, holding signs, or been in the state house with you. Or so there's these like long-term relationships, shared a meal with you, you know. So all of these are ways that we build connection. So instead of it being an extractive form of organizing where kind of we're in, we're out, take action, and that's it, where we've built relationships with each other. And we're whole people. We know about each other's kids. We know each other about different things about what is working or not working. So it's how do we invest in long-term relationships within movement building? One of my favorite things to see is within a lot of Latino organizing, dance and food are core to a lot of the work that's being done nationally. And so I always think about that as I organize. Shayla has taught me how to do pizza and playgrounds, where we go to the playground and play and eat pizza together. Another wonderful way of connecting with families. So the key benefits of relational organizing are: one, trust and credibility. Communication coming from someone in a person's personal network is more likely to be trusted and perceived as credible, leading to higher engagement and participation rates. Expanding your reach. So by tapping into existing networks of volunteers, campaign's message can reach a wider audience beyond the immediate circle of organizers. Personalized approach. Relational organizing allows for personalized messages to be tailored to individual interests, concerns, increasing the likelihood of a positive response. So an example is Shayla and I and Grace and Rex and many of the other folks on this call, we have relationships with folks. We know what's going on in their lives. So often we'll tailor the messages and the emails we put out to speak directly to the people we're in relationship with, because we've listened to their stories. Stronger community building. By involving friends and family in the organizing process, relational organizing fosters a sense of community and shared purpose, making individuals feel more connected to a cause. Long-term engagement. When people are engaged through their personal connections, they're more likely to remain committed to the cause over the long term. And amplify impact. Relational organizing creates a multiplier effect, as each new person engages through personal networks can in turn reach out to their own connections, creating a chain reaction of involvement. So you can see in the graphic we have here, you're at the center, you reach out to your 5 friends, they reach out to their 5 friends, and all of a sudden one person is 25 people. So it's pretty fascinating when you start using relational organizing. It's very effective, and I've actually run campaigns where in a 3-month period, you go from 0 name recognition to building up organizational name recognition and a volunteer base of dozens of volunteers when you're really strategic and thoughtful about the way that you kind of implement some of these strategies. All done.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jamie. The second tool is community mapping. I love community mapping. Community mapping is a good way to get started with your own recruitment efforts when you're just at the very beginning stages. It's a nice, powerful way of visualizing your network. You can even draw it out on paper to get the full picture, which is something I sometimes do. A good community map will help you visualize your network and start to form groups who want to engage in collective action with you. So you start with yourself, the smallest LGK blue circle in there. You start by creating a list of individuals with whom you have deep connections. This is often family members, close friends. That's your intimacy circle. Now think about where in your community do you have influence with others? Are you in community or in social groups? Are you on a board somewhere? Outside of that is your affiliation circle. Where in your community do you have an affiliation? Do you know someone who works for the town or sits on a local committee? Do you work with other local groups towards a common goal? Affiliation can sometimes be confusing, so I like to give examples. For example, I used to attend meetings that were run by Hunger Free Vermont when I first started out as an organizer. They were working on school meals for kids. So, you know, the jump to working on making sure kids' bellies are full to making sure that kids have high quality, affordable childcare, kind of alignment and mission there. So I would consider Hunger Free Vermont like an affiliation space working towards the good for children. Lastly, who are the folks that you see in your community regularly that fall into the category of acquaintance? You know, you may not know them, but you run into them from time to time, and they might be open to joining your cause. So just like this awesome image, you are in the center of the circle, and you will hold the most influence with those in closer circles. And movement and growth often occurs when individuals begin talking with those in their outer circles, right? So there's a little bit of stretching and getting outside of your comfort zone with organizing, and it's really beautiful when it's done and done well. All right, so next we are going to talk about the details, goals and strategies and tactics. Jamie, you are up.
So I love that we've laid a foundation for doing the work. So we've kind of shared with you about power. We've talked to you about how do we organize ourselves to win. We've talked a little bit about relational organizing and community mapping. So when you often think about a campaign or organizing, you're thinking about goals, strategies, and tactics. So a goal is what you want. Then a strategy is how you're going to win. And a tactic is the specific actions you're going to take to get to your goal. So what's interesting, how many of us have thought, I want to accomplish something, and we go right into tactics? Anybody want to like raise their hand who can admit that? So I'll start. I've been doing this a long time. Queen of tactics right here. Nice to have them informed by goals and strategies. So we're going to go a little bit over some specifics about this. So a goal is what you want. An example is elect a childcare champion, implement Act 76, install a sidewalk on a busy road. So thinking about your example, if you can go back to the beginning, we asked you to think about an example of something you would like, a goal that you would like to accomplish. So keep that in your mind as we go through this exercise. Maintain a democracy could be a goal, for instance. So a strategy is the broader plan for how you will get what you want. A strategy is basically our theory of change. It's our boiled down plan for how you're going to win. If you can't say it in one sentence, it's probably not a strategy. So some examples are advocacy. So types of strategies include advocacy, which is lobby key legislators or stakeholders directly. Another example is education campaigns. Get people to change individual behavior through education rather than changing laws, or use education to support the change in the law. Electoral, retain a childcare champion who's in office, or replace somebody who doesn't agree with the work that is being done for investing in early childhood education. Ballot initiatives place an issue on the ballot and in the hands of constituents. Media campaigns run press and social and commercial campaigns to put pressure on decision makers, and pressure and persuasion. So this is a big one that advocates use. We often work as long as we can on persuasion and bring that as long as we can. We use that tactic as long as we can, or strategy as long as we can, and then we shift into pressure if that doesn't work. So please, sometimes my notes are a little bit more behind the scenes. Do you all want to share your favorite strategies in the chat? Ones that you've used towards goals? So Grace, I'll depend on you to share some of those as they come up. So tactics is the final one. So finally, tactics are the specific actions you take to get what you want. And so examples are rallies, phone banks, front porch forum posts, making or sending emails, tabling. These are all tactics. Honkin' waves, house parties. These are all tactics that we're going to get into. So I think that's it for that one, Shayla. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Oh, here we go. I got to move over my slides here.
Grace, did people put any strategies that they like in the chat or goals?
Yes, one of our star volunteers, Matthew, who's done a lot of emails and petitions to our legislative members.
Lovely. Okay, I'm going to put it together in a jokey way, and then I'm going to put it together in a serious way.
And I also want to say, I did just see Sally's too. Sally, I like that. Relationships with institutions. Thanks. That one just popped up on my screen. Go ahead, Shayla. Sorry.
Awesome. So just ignore the slide for 2 seconds because I'm going to give you a little funny scenario for an understanding check, and then we'll move to this slide. So imagine a 6-year-old child who has a goal of getting a caregiver to give them an ice cream cone. There are a few strategies to go about doing this, right? First strategy, persuade your caregiver to give it to them. Another one, get to that caregiver through another person, a parent, a sibling, grandma. Another one, create chaos until they just give me what I want. Each of these 3 strategies has some tactics, right? The persuade, the tactic would be smile sweetly, bat my eyes, hold their hand and tell them that they're my favorite. To get to them through another person, ask your sister to remind them that they promised ice cream today. Tell grandma and mom already said it was okay. Put a cute sign on the dog and send it in saying ice cream today. Those are tactics, right? Third strategy, create chaos until they just give me what I want. Tactics might be run around screaming, pitch a fit, embarrass them in public, overwhelm them with noise so that they give me the ice cream and get the noise to stop. Those of us with children or familiar with children don't love these tactics, but do kids try them on? And do they sometimes work? Absolutely. My kids know for me that noise is a trigger, and so often I will do things to get the noise to stop. That's a very light example of digging down into strategies and tactics. So now for a more focused example, let's look at this. The goal. Every child in Vermont has quality, affordable childcare, right? Strategies, a few that we use, but certainly not all, study the issue, educate decision makers and the public about the issue, and build a grassroots list of people with personal stories about the need for the goal. So let's dig in a little deeper, study the issue, right? The tactics would be identify who has the expertise, gather data from multiple sources, and compile a report with those findings. You know, these are, if we wanted to say, pass a monumental childcare bill, these might be tactics that we would use. Another strategy, educate decision makers and the public about the issue. Individual tactics, set up meetings with your lawmakers to discuss the report findings. Email that report to all of your elected officials. Identify organizations that intersect with families and get that report to them. And then a third strategy, build that grassroots list of people with personal stories about the need for the goal. table at events where families go to all the kids' days, go to the fairs. Ask folks to share contact info if they're interested in your goal and willing to share that with their representatives. And then have a database to store all of the info collected so that you can do outreach to your people when you have timely asks, right? So when we're talking about goals, strategies, and tactics, there's definite breakdowns along the way, but it can get confusing. So some of the other tactics that we've used to get where we are today, phone banking. We've used phone banking for polling to educate people. We've gone canvassing and door knocking to go to where people live to let them know that we're out here fighting this fight. We've had volunteers post on Front Porch Forum. We've done voter registration drives, house parties, and all of these tactics have been effective. All right, that was a lot of nitty gritty. How do we feel? Are we as a group clear on the differences between, goal is pretty easy, but the differences between strategy and tactics? If you have any confusing things, yeah, put it in the chat. And if we're feeling pretty solid about them, we can jump right into recruitment tactics.
I'm feeling so solid about this.
I would hope so, Jamie. All right, here you go. Oh, this is me. I love this picture. This is a recent picture. So
some folks who are on the call are in this picture.
All right, so recruitment builds your movement. And what do I mean when I say that? So Let's Grow Kids is a movement that we wanted to grow every day, but we could and do lose people every day. This is normal, right? Many people who come to an event and sign the petition won't come back. And that's okay. Turnover is a real and okay thing in organizing, and you should know that going into it. So, for example, when I started with Let's Grow Kids in 2015, I didn't have my own children. I certainly was not as versed in the childcare crisis as I am now, the same as the people that I was interacting with. So we had people who got involved with us when they had 2- and 3-year-olds whose kids are now well out of the childcare years. And so they've moved on to other things that they're going to advocate for, and that's okay. And that, it's not a negative turnover. It's just something that you know as an organizer and you work with and you plan in your organizing. We do a lot of work to get people in the door, and we want to make sure that we're doing our best to keep them around. So we use a lot of different tactics so that people have a variety of ways to engage with us, some that feel comfortable and easy, and some that feel like a stretch and a push outside of your comfort zone. And that's good. That's a goal. You want a lot of different things for people to be able to engage with. Which brings me to a little thing that I would love to remind you all. We're going to have a quick talk about what we call organizer math. So say you want to have a party where 50 people attend. Do you know how many people you need to have confirmed, like who have told you they're going to come in order to get to 50 people? Silence, 10 silence. It's about 100. You need 100 people to tell you that, yes, they will definitely be there at your event to have 50 people show up. It seems a little crazy. It is tried and true over and over and over again. And to
how many people were confirmed for today's call as an example?
Good. How many people are here today? I can't see. I know how many signed up.
I remember I thought it was like 50.
Okay. And
so I think we've got
half, right? Yeah. So perfect example. And how many people do you need to contact and invite to get to 100 confirmed people? It's over 200. It's more than it's more than 400, really. So when we're doing what we call organizer math, it's exponentially bigger the farther out you go. And so if you have 10 people confirmed to come to your event, you can bank on 5 of them, because life happens. We all know this, right? We're not upset about it, but we know when we want to push for a certain number of attendees, you have to confirm double the amount. So when you're planning out the tactics that you want to use to make things happen, keep organizer math in the back of your mind. So,
Kayla, I just wanted to add that one of the things that helped me learning organizer math was it built resilience in me as an organizer. It made me less susceptible to disappointment and understanding human behavior, and just being like, oh, people have busy lives. And I see being an organizer as somebody who's like a reminder. So I'm a professional reminder. I'm like,
Yes.
hi, this is important. Hi, I know you have to grocery shop. Hi, I know the kids are sick. Hi. It's like, you're just there and you're there and you're there and you're saying, this is important, this is important, this is important. Because every day we have probably 100 decisions we have to make about what's going to get our limited time and resources. And so you
Yes.
get to be, and so you actually just start to be like, hi.
Yeah. Yep. And we're also like, you know, the majority of the people involved with us have young kids in their lives, and we know that young kids tend to mess up plans pretty regularly. So it's not something that you should take personally, but it is something that you should plan for. So of these recruitment tactics, you're going to think of these as tools in your toolbox. Again, these are not all of them. These are just the ones that we tend to use the most, that we're, you know, the most familiar with teaching about. There's a lot of different approaches, and you may have guessed one size does not fit all when it comes to recruitment. I'm curious, I would love you all to put in the chat who has done what. Have you ever participated in any of these? Spoiler alert, I know that you have because I've recognized faces in here, but we would also love to know other ones that you've done with other organizations. Posting on social media, tabling, hosting a house party, Hunkin' Waves, all of these are fantastic tactics that we have used to bring people into the movement and keep them engaged with us. This is our third Lunch and Learn, but we have hosted 2 previous Lunch and Learns, which are also recorded and available to you, specifically about storytelling as a tactic and direct advocacy, like emailing your legislators. So we're going to go a little bit deeper on tabling, house parties, and Hunkin' Waves because they are really effective and really very fun. All right, there you go, Jamie.
Thanks, Jayla. So I also want to do a shout out. We've had some really snazzy slides because Angela Hillsman, who's on our comms team, who's also on the call today, helped us with graphics. So shout out to Angela for your comms help. So tabling. Who's tabled with Let's Grow Kids? Anyone? So this is like one of our staples in the movement. Showing up outside supermarkets, being at faith gatherings, being at fairs, being at parades, Queechy Balloon Festival, anyone? Like, you name it, we've been there all over Vermont. And so tabling is really effective because it can do a couple of things. You connect with new audience of supporters. So thinking about the kinds of events you show up to, I'll tell you one of my favorite events that I have tabled at in all of my counties is It Takes a Village just started in Montpelier on the State House lawn. And it is specifically targeted to pregnant people who are just about to give birth or have just given birth. And because of that, these are folks who are very receptive to talking about the childcare crisis. And very quickly, when I was going to events all over the state, I was like, holy cow, It Takes a Village is such an effective event to organize at because these are folks that this is so relevant for them right now. So that's an example. Add new people to your supporter list. So making sure that you have a way to track people's contact information and get the campaign message out. So we always have simple information that talks about our goals, our strategies. Well, usually our goals, not necessarily always our strategies and our tactics, but there's very clear information on all of our tabling materials. And then another key thing to have every time you table is something that draws people over. So food or bubbles, or we love to bring out our giant Legos and our giant Connect 4 so kids come over and play. And then we talk to the adults while the kids are happy and entertained. So these are some great ways of thinking about effective organizing. So if you decide to do tabling, usually your setup is simple. Info about your organization and goal, action folks can take, gather their contact info, and fun things to draw them in. Also, if you're in front of your table, here's just some strategies we've learned. What's effective is being in front of your table or holding a clipboard and being out and about, not sitting in a chair behind your table. So always standing. I remember when Rex is still here, Rex was training me the very first time, and he and I were, I can't remember, I think it was the Berry Dabble Days. It's like a kids event. And he and I were just standing out in front of our table and just talking to everybody. And it was so fun because there was 2 of us and we were out and we were having a great time chatting with folks. So what's really critical about that is standing in front of the table, talking to everyone, being very careful about bias. So like who you're going to talk to and who you're not going to talk to. Assume that you're going to talk to everybody and all walks of life, and just being really intentional to do that. And also having a good catchphrase, or what we call the stop line. Are you going to go into the stop line, Shayla? Are you saying what this? I feel like you're going into the stop line, right?
I am, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so a good stop line contains the 4 C's. So connection, context, commitment, and catapult, right? You want them to take action. So connection, you use a stop line, right? A stop line is basically they're going to stop and talk to you. So you use a stop line and then you make a connection with the person. Share why you are volunteering or supportive. Context, give them information about why it's important and why right now. Commitment, ask them to take an action right there while you're with them, signing up to volunteer for something, signing a petition, taking a t-shirt with you, something. And then catapult, we want to make sure that we have their contact information so that we can keep them involved. I'm going to do a little role play with myself, and what we call it a wrap sometimes, is when I'm out in the community. So I've been to, I don't know how many hundreds of tabling events over my time here, and I have drilled it down to something that gets people's attention the very first time. I'm standing out front of my table, I've got my clipboard, I'm smiling, I've got the bubble machine going, and someone looks at me and they make eye contact. And I say, hey, have you heard about the childcare campaign? And then it takes a minute for them to be like, in the back of their head, they're like, oh my God, there's a campaign for childcare. I need to hear more about this because either I have kids and I can't find childcare, or I know someone who has, something. It's clicked. And they'll go, no, I haven't. And I'll go, oh, I'm so glad you stopped. The childcare campaign is a movement to ensure all families in Vermont have access to high quality, affordable, and accessible childcare. We want the state to make investments that will make childcare more affordable and accessible for Vermont families, while also supporting the programs and the educators who provide that. I've been volunteering with them, I would say working, because I know there are too many families in my town who don't have access to care. And I know that childcare is essential for our families and communities to thrive. On the one hand, parents can't afford to pay more. And on the other hand, educators can't afford to make less. So would you be interested in signing this petition in favor of high quality, affordable childcare? And then you can see their brain working. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to share their story with you. They're going to go, oh my goodness, this was a problem 3 decades ago when I had kids, or I moved here. Rex, I'm looking at you. I moved here because our children had kids and they couldn't find care, so we moved to do the care. It will always lead to a conversation and the beginning of a relationship, if I'm being very honest, right? Like, we meet most of our best volunteers when we're having conversations like this in front of our table. It's usually hot and buggy. It's a perfect Vermont summer, and we're really getting into details with people. So they sign your petition, they give you their contact information, and then after 2.5, 3 minutes, they're on their way to the next table. That's it. You have had a 2-minute conversation with someone who is now a supporter of your movement because they're invested personally in the mission that you are working for. And it's all because of that one stop line that catches their interest. You will also need your stop line at a house party.
Thanks. Great lead in, Shayla. I do want to do a shout out for my colleague Rex, who's on the line, because one of the tools he developed that I really like, he actually uses it when he's tabling. That's a little sophisticated for me. I'm usually like, what's your story? That's what I can handle. But Rex does this really cool thing where as soon as someone has demonstrated interest in supporting the childcare movement, he has a volunteer interest form. He immediately fills out their name and asks them what kinds of volunteer things they like to do. And so he captures immediately, like, do they like to table? Do they like to make phone calls? Are they interested in sharing a story? And he tracks in that very first interaction, depending on their level of motivation and interaction, like more information about them, and make sure to include that in all of his tracking. And I think that's a very effective way to transform somebody from inaction to action on an issue. So you have to ask Rex for that because it's a really cool tool. So one thing I will point out, and this doesn't apply to house parties, I realize I forgot to say something about tabling, but it's really important to understand about movement building and organizing. Do you want to spend all your time trying to convince someone who doesn't agree with you? Do you want to spend your time with people who completely agree with you? Do you want to spend your time with folks that might need some context to shift into motivation? So one of the things that I learned as an organizer was, depending on your goal, the answer to those questions is different. And so you have to think through how you use your time. And I am guilty as the next person of spending 20 minutes with one person who's going to argue every single point, when in that 20 minutes, I could have talked to 20 supporters and gotten them to sign a petition. So I think it's really important. Ooh, I see Rex sharing something in the chat. So I think it's really important just to think through strategy and discipline yourself to think about how you communicate in the way you engage with folks, depending on your goal, and use your time wisely. So speaking of which, we have 10 minutes left, and I'm going to jump into the slide I'm actually supposed to be talking about, which is house parties. Okay, so I got into movement building through the house party strategy, and I've used this to do movement building year after year, and I love it. Not only have we used the house party strategy to build up an entire organization in New Hampshire that I helped start, but we also helped create a food co-op in Keene, New Hampshire, which is wildly successful, using all of the strategies I learned through political organizing, because it's all the same stuff. So it's, how do you gather people, introduce them to a goal, motivate them to take action through a personal story, and build your base and gather contact information. So what's a house party? A house party is a gathering of 8 to 10 people, usually in somebody's home. A lot of times when I have sat down with volunteers and asked them to host a house party, they're like, I'm happy to do it at the coffee shop, but I don't want to do it at my house. But the argument is, why do we do it at our house? So being in our home does a couple of things. It creates an intimate setting. It creates accountability. People are more comfortable sharing their stories and committing to action. It's a less intimidating space than a public space. And so it creates a different energy in somebody's home than a public space generally. A lot of times people love hosting things in libraries. Totally fine. House parties are different. They show up in people's lives differently. We did a series of house parties in the fall, and they were just so lovely. The kids were playing. Somebody provided a whole spread of food and drinks. People chatted with each other. We were in each other's homes. People love being in each other's houses and talking to each other and sharing stories. And so in that process, you're doing the 4 C's again. So the same thing that Shayla just talked about, which is, I can never remember, I wrote them down. Connection, context, commitment, catapult. You're gonna have to write them down, because if it's as hard for you to remember as me, then you're gonna need a 3x5 card. So you're gonna find new supporters through your volunteer networks and turn them into active volunteers with this method. It's a tool also to renew hope and re-engage with whatever issue you're working on. In our case, the childcare movement. But having the host agree to tell a story about why this matters to them and why they've agreed to take action, even to the point of inviting strangers into their home, pretty powerful way of showing people how they can create change. It also builds community, and it helps. There's a lot of studies that show that democracies are resilient when you have this kind of community. So anybody interested in building a resilient democracy? So anyway, so a good house meeting host does a couple of things. They're willing to connect folks in their network and reach out and invite them. Remember back to our community mapping and our sphere of influence conversations. You kind of sit down with a house party host and work through that process with them. In my experience, when you have your first one-on-one with them and they agree to do a house party and they say, I'll make the list at home later, and you say, sure, that list never materializes. So the strategy I've used over the years is I sit down with them and I brainstorm with them and we write the list together as a community building activity. And then they do the initial outreach. You give them templates for emailing folks and call scripts to call folks, so that it makes it, as an organizer, you're making it really easy for them to take action, but that you're asking them to use your tools to do outreach to their network. They're willing to invite their network to an organization's event, or if they're able to also share a personal story about why the issue matters to them. And if they're able to kind of share inspiration and importance of an issue. It also is a great way to have fun, and depending on the situation, I've had it where, there's toys all over and the kids are everywhere. We had wonderful ones where we met with our senators and our members of the House, where you're making relationships with your elected leaders. There's lots of different ways you can use these. Simple jobs for the host. Create a list of folks to invite, pick a date, time for a house party. Invite more than you expect to attend. Remember your organizer math. Invite 30 if you want 10 to show. Email and call invitees 2 weeks prior to an event. Follow up 2 days in advance with reminders about folks who committed to be there. And organize food and drinks. Those are a couple of the things a host needs to do. And then kind of the flow of the house party is what happens at a house party. So back to the 4 C's: connection, context, commitment, and catapult. You introduce the organization and the goals. You introduce the strategy to win. Organizers or hosts share a personal story. You talk about how guests can help with the goal, a small piece of what they can do to help with the total goal. Call to action and taking action together. So that's pretty much what a house party is. And we've got an awesome house party packet if you're interested in seeing that. All right.
They're so fun. House parties are one of my very favorite things. Second only to a good old honk and wave. Honk and waves. All right, I'm going to be real with you all, okay? Honk and waves are fun. Everyone loves a honk and wave. They are really, really easy to turn volunteers out to, but when it comes to an actual hard ask or an action, they're kind of meh. You can't really do much if you're holding your sign and everything is in your hand and you're getting honks. But this is also okay, right? Like, just like turnover with your list is okay, having fun events for your volunteers and your people to do that don't really have anything in mind other than like having fun and being seen is really important. As an organizer, you need fun things to offer your people that keep them engaged and having fun. The visibility is great. The swag is great. The kids doing the arm pump for the big trucks that drive by is great. Honk and waves are almost universally enjoyed by everybody, almost everyone. Can't say that officially, but almost everyone loves them. And it's a fun maker, right? You want to have a wide variety of things that you're inviting people to, and some of them should just be for fun because they're going to build relationships when they're there. They're going to have fun with you. And sometimes in a really stressful time, you just need fun, right? Okay, that, friends, is a 1-hour primer on organizing for success that took us 10 years to fully master. It's really hard to capture 10 years worth of organizing in an hour. So we have 2 minutes left. Apologies for really chatting this through with you all. I am going to stop my share and maybe we can get to some questions. Sorry, I'm just seeing the chat now. I don't have access to this when I'm sharing in the way that I do. Does anyone have questions specific to organizing or clarification that we can get to before we scoot? Yep, Claire.
Apologies if this was answered in a previous session. This is the first one I've been able to attend, and thank you. When I first got to Vermont, I was like, what is this Let's Go Kids? They're everywhere. It's amazing. So yeah,
Yes.
you guys are definitely best in class. I was wondering, like, it's a very simple thing, but when it comes to the CDD regulations for childcare, who is actually in charge of those? It is such a hard system to map, the Vermont landscape. And as a preschool owner, I feel like I've gotten most of it. But if you wanted a regulation to be updated or changed, is that a legislative thing? Is there a direct, like, yeah, who?
That is a good and very nuanced question. I can tell you it's not Let's Grow Kids.
Yeah, no,
The
yeah.
CDD, and I would suggest talking to your licensor only because they would have a better idea of who to specifically ask your question of. Does
Because
anyone else
it feels
wanna?
like if you want them to change, because yes, but if you want them to change, like who is going to make them change? Do you know what I mean? Like if
I
they're
do.
like,
Yes.
yeah, who's the influencer of CDD, I guess is,
Yeah.
I don't know if this is speaking out of turn, but I see Beth Wallace here from Vermont AEYC. And one of the things that AEYCs do is work with early childhood educators. And so, Beth, I don't know if you want to add to that, but I think it's important to know what your network is because different networks are able to exert collective pressure around sets of policies or procedures.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to go offline and talk a little more specifically about what you're thinking. But you know, your mention of networks also brings to mind the Vermont Early Childhood Networks. There are regional networks around the state. In all parts of the state. Some have more than others. But that's a good like network of folks to talk through questions and think about whether there are common interests or initiatives. There are also statewide networks for directors, family childcare, infant, toddler, and preschool folks. And yeah, we'd be happy. We work really closely with CDD because we administer a lot of their grants. So we have that connection to those organizations. So I'd be happy. I can put my email in the chat if somebody wants to reach out specifically.
okay. And so is it ruled by legislators or it's not? It's just a separate thing? No.
It's
It's
a
not
government.
something that you can, yeah, it's not something that you can necessarily organize for quickly. It takes a lot of time. It's a slow moving system.
Don't worry, Claire, because now that you've taken our training, you understand how to be successful at transforming the system.
1 hour. That's all it takes. Thanks for the 10 years.
Yeah. Any other last questions?
I just want to flag for folks that for the field team, our last day is going to be on July 11th. We're transitioning into kind of the next phase of the campaigns where different organizations are supporting different parts of the childcare movement. You'll probably get an email from Let's Grow Kids Action Network inviting you to engage. That will be kind of the way that Let's Grow Kids will continue on. For many of us, our last day is July 11th, and so we're kind of having end of campaign parties. So I'm inviting folks to the Middlesex party on June 24th, or the Randolph party on June 25th, or the Morrisville party on July 9th. So feel free to call me or text me. I'll put my cell phone number in the chat. And if there's other folks who have things that they're aware of that they want to invite folks to, feel free to invite folks now.
And if you have any more burning organizing questions, both Jamie and I put our contact information in there and reach out to us, and we are happy to go deeper. This is hard work for us, so we love answering questions.
You'll get follow up with the recording of this session later in the next couple of weeks. You'll get an email reminding you about something we're calling the Resource Hub, where we'll have some of these resources available for you. And then please do remember to check out that Let's Grow Kids Action Network invitation email. So thanks, guys. Thanks for being here. Sorry we went a couple minutes over.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.